In the heart of the Wild West, a notorious bandit made the gravest mistake of his life when he challenged a humble priest to a gunfight. Little did he know that the man of cloth was once the most feared gunslinger in the territory, with more confirmed kills than any lawman or outlaw combined. This encounter would become a legendary tale that echoed through generations. The year was 1875, and the small town of Devil's Fork, Arizona, was experiencing an unprecedented wave of violence. The Raven Gang, led by the infamous Marcus Black Eye Thompson, had been terrorizing the region for months. Their reputation for ruthlessness grew with each robbery, leaving a trail of blood and tragedy across the territory. Thompson, with his signature black eye patch and silver-plated revolvers, had become the embodiment of terror for honest folk trying to make a living in the unforgiving desert. Father Michael O'Malley, who had arrived in Devil's Fork just 6 months prior, was different from any priest the townsfolk had ever met. His calloused hands seemed more accustomed to gripping iron than holding a Bible, and his eyes carried a weight that spoke of a past burned deep into his soul. When he walked down the dusty streets, even the most hardened cowboys stepped aside, though none could explain why. The children of the town whispered stories about the mysterious scars visible on his forearms when he rolled up his sleeves to help build the new schoolhouse. The paths of these two men were destined to cross on a scorching Sunday afternoon. The Raven Gang had just pulled their most daring heist yet, robbing the newly established First National Bank of Devil's Fork. As the gang celebrated their success at the Golden Spur Saloon, Thompson's ego, fueled by whiskey and victory, reached dangerous heights. The topic of conversation turned to the strange priest who had refused to pay their protection money for the church and its orphanage. "That collar-wearing fool thinks he's above our law," Thompson sneered, his words slightly slurred as he addressed his men. "Maybe it's time we teach him what happens to those who don't respect the natural order of things around here." The gang members exchanged nervous glances, as even in their drunken state, something about Father O'Malley made them uneasy. What happened next would be retold in every saloon from Texas to California. Thompson, stumbling out into the blinding sunlight, made his way toward the small white church on the hill. The townsfolk quickly cleared the streets, ducking into doorways and behind windows, knowing that blood would soon stain the desert sand. Father O'Malley was tending to his small garden when the shadow of the notorious outlaw fell across his work. "Stand up, preacher man," Thompson called out, his voice carrying across the empty street. "Time to see if your God can stop a bullet." The priest slowly rose from his knees, brushing the dirt from his black pants with deliberate care. His movements were measured, precise, too precise for a simple man of God. "My son," Father O'Malley spoke softly, his Irish accent barely noticeable after years in the American West, "I strongly suggest you reconsider your current course of action." There was something in his voice, a quiet authority that made several of Thompson's men take unconscious steps backward. Thompson, however, was too far gone in his drunken bravado to notice the warning signs. "Draw your weapon, priest," he spat, his hand hovering over his prized silver revolver. "Or don't you believe in defending yourself?" Father O'Malley's response sent chills down the spines of everyone within earshot. "Before I was a servant of God," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "I was known by another name, the Ghost of Sonora. Perhaps you've heard of me?" The color drained from Thompson's face as recognition dawned. The Ghost of Sonora was a legend, a spectral figure who had terrorized Mexican bandits and American outlaws alike in the 1850s, disappearing without a trace after a massacre at Dead Man's Gulch that left 27 men dead. The air grew thick with tension as Thompson's mind raced through his options. His reputation was on the line. He couldn't back down now, not in front of his men, not in front of the whole town. But he had heard the stories of the ghost, how he could draw and fire before his opponent's hand even touched their weapon. Some said he had made a deal with the devil himself, trading his soul for supernatural speed with a gun. As the sun reached its zenith above Devil's Fork, two men stood facing each other in the dusty street. One a drunk outlaw who had finally pushed too far, the other a priest carrying the burden of a violent past he had tried to leave behind. The stage was set for a confrontation that would become the stuff of legend, and the next few moments would determine whether redemption or damnation would prevail in the harsh landscape of the American frontier. As Thompson stood frozen in the scorching afternoon heat, memories of whispered tales about the ghost of Sonora flooded his mind. Stories told around campfires spoke of a man who could predict where his opponents would shoot, moving like a phantom through gunsmoke and chaos. The ghost had never left witnesses among his enemies, save for one trembling youth who spread the tale of how 15 banditos fell in less than 30 seconds, their bullets seemingly passing through an apparition. Father O'Malley remained motionless, his weathered hands hanging loosely at his sides. The years had etched deep lines into his face, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath his calm exterior. His eyes, usually warm and compassionate when delivering Sunday sermons, now held a cold, calculating look that made hardened gunfighters think twice. "I left that life behind," the priest continued, his voice carrying across the dead silent street. "I found peace in serving others and helping those who have lost their way." He took a single step forward, and despite the heat, Thompson felt a chill run down his spine. "Just as I once lost mine." From the shadows of the saloon porch, Jake Rattler Wilson, Thompson's right-hand man, watched the scene unfold with growing unease. He had heard of the ghost during his younger days running with the Mexicali Raiders. The stories told of a man who had single-handedly wiped out the infamous Velasquez brothers and their entire gang, leaving no trace except for empty shells and cooling bodies in the desert sand. Thompson's hand trembled slightly as it hovered over his silver revolver. Pride and fear waged war in his mind. Each step backward from this challenge would cost him respect among his men, but each moment he remained in the killing ground brought him closer to becoming another legend in the ghost's bloody history. "You're lying," Thompson finally managed, his voice cracking slightly. "The ghost disappeared 15 years ago. You're just a priest trying to save his skin with tall tales." But even as he spoke the words, doubt gnawed at him. The way O'Malley carried himself, the practiced stance that only came from years of gunfights, it all added up to something far more dangerous than a simple man of the cloth. Father O'Malley sighed, a sound heavy with regret. "I prayed you would walk away, my son. Violence brings only more violence. A truth I learned at terrible cost." His right hand moved slightly, and everyone in the street flinched. But he only reached up to touch the silver cross hanging from his neck. "Do you know what finally made me lay down my guns? It wasn't fear, nor was it injury. It was holding a dying man in my arms, a man I had shot, and hearing his last confession. In that moment I understood the weight of every life I had taken." The gathered crowd watched in tense silence as the priest's words hung in the air. Among them stood Sarah Cooper, the schoolteacher who had worked closely with Father O'Malley to establish the town's first proper school. She had always sensed there was more to the quiet priest than he let on, catching glimpses of a profound sadness in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. Thompson's gang members began to shift uncomfortably, some discreetly backing away from their leader. The legendary ghost of Sonora was said to have never lost a fight, never missed a shot, and never shown mercy to those who forced his hand. If this priest truly was the ghost, then their leader was already a dead man walking. "The choice remains yours," Father O'Malley continued, his Irish lilt becoming more pronounced as he spoke. "You can holster your weapon, walk away from this path of destruction and find a better way. Or you can draw against me, forcing my hand and ensuring that one of us will have to answer to God for what happens next." The priest's eyes flickered briefly to the church behind him, where he had spent countless hours seeking redemption for his past sins. The tension in the street had reached a breaking point. Thompson's breathing became ragged as sweat poured down his face, stinging his good eye. His reputation, built on years of violence and intimidation, hung by a thread. The logical part of his mind screamed at him to back down, to find some way to salvage his pride without risking everything. But pride and whiskey were a deadly combination, and logic rarely won against either. Time seemed to slow as Thompson's muscles tensed, preparing for what could be his final action. Behind him, Rattler Wilson quietly drew his own weapon, weighing his options. If the priest truly was the ghost, loyalty to Thompson might cost him his life. But if there was even a chance to save his leader's reputation, and his own by extension, he had to try. The hot Arizona wind whistled through the street, carrying with it the scent of sage and dust. In the distance, a church bell tolled, marking the hour. The sound seemed to echo the finality of the moment. Within seconds, the truth about Father O'Malley would be revealed, and the fate of everyone present would be decided by lead and gunpowder. What happened next became the stuff of frontier legend, a sequence of events so quick that witnesses would argue for years about the exact details. Thompson's hand darted toward his silver-plated revolver, the movement born of countless robberies and gunfights. But before his fingers could close around the grip, Father O'Malley moved with supernatural grace. The priest's right hand swept his black coat aside, revealing a worn leather holster that had been hidden by the folds of his garment. In one fluid motion that seemed to defy the laws of nature, he drew an old Colt Peacemaker, a gun that had taken more lives than anyone dared count. The weapon appeared in his hand as if by magic, its blued steel catching the sunlight. Thompson managed to clear his holster just as O'Malley's gun barked once. The sound echoed off the buildings like thunder, and Thompson's silver revolver went spinning from his grip, a precise shot having struck the weapon itself. Before anyone could blink, a second shot rang out, and Rattler Wilson's hidden gun clattered to the dirt, his shocked expression revealing he never even saw O'Malley notice his drawn weapon. The entire exchange had taken less than 2 seconds. No blood had been spilled, but the demonstration of skill left no doubt about the priest's true identity. The ghost of Sonora's reputation for supernatural accuracy hadn't been exaggerated. If anything, the stories had understated his abilities. 20 years ago, Father O'Malley spoke into the ringing silence, his gun still trained steadily between the two men. I would have killed you both without hesitation. The ghost of Sonora showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and left no survivors. His voice carried the weight of countless battles and endless regrets. But God's grace showed me a better path, one that doesn't end in blood and death. Thompson stood trembling, his empty hand still frozen in the position of holding his lost gun. The realization of how close he had come to death turned his face ashen. Behind him, Rattler Wilson had dropped to his knees, a man known for his courage now reduced to shaking at the sight of legend made real. Your gang will leave Devil's Fork today, O'Malley continued, his voice carrying the authority of both his past and present roles. You will not return. The church's money that you stole will be left on these steps before sundown. His eyes hard as granite swept across the remaining gang members. If any man here doubts my resolve or abilities, I'll gladly provide another demonstration. The Raven gang members, hardened criminals all, began backing away immediately. They had seen enough to know that the stories of the ghost had been true, perhaps even understated. Thompson remained rooted to the spot, his world crumbling around him as his fearsome reputation was shattered in mere seconds. Sarah Cooper stepped forward from the crowd, her voice breaking the tension. Father, I think Mr. Thompson needs medical attention. He appears to be in shock. Her words seemed to break the spell that held everyone in place. O'Malley nodded slowly, holstering his weapon with the same fluid grace with which he had drawn it. Take care of him, Miss Cooper, the priest said softly, his voice returning to its usual gentle tone. Sometimes the hardest wounds to heal are those dealt to pride. He turned toward Thompson's men, who flinched under his gaze. You have 1 hour to gather your belongings and return what you've stolen. After that, if any of you remain in Devil's Fork, I will consider it a challenge to both my current and former occupations. The gang scattered like leaves in a wind, nearly trampling each other in their haste to escape. Thompson, supported by Sarah Cooper and the town doctor who had rushed forward, was led away from the scene of his humiliation. The crowd began to disperse, though many lingered, wanting to witness every moment of this extraordinary event. Father O'Malley stood alone in the street, his shoulders slightly slumped as if bearing an invisible weight. Mayor Harrison approached him cautiously, his voice filled with awe and gratitude. Father, you've saved our town. We can never repay you for this. The priest turned to face him, and for a moment, the hardened gunfighter was visible beneath the collar. What I did today was necessary, but it brings me no joy. Violence, even in defense of others, carries a cost to the soul. He gazed up at the church, its white walls bright in the afternoon sun. Tonight, I will pray for all of us, for Thompson and his men, for our town, and for myself. The past never truly leaves us, Mr. Mayor. We can only hope to use its lessons to build a better future. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the legend of Father O'Malley, the priest who was once the ghost of Sonora, began to spread. But in Devil's Fork, they would remember not just his incredible display of skill, but also the mercy he showed, a mercy born from years of violence and redemption found in faith. The town had witnessed something rare that day, a man who had mastered both the art of dealing death and the greater challenge of choosing life instead. By sunset, Devil's Fork had transformed. The Raven Gang, true to Father O'Malley's command, had vanished like morning mist, leaving behind not only the church's stolen money, but also every cent they had taken from the bank. Their hasty departure left behind half-empty bottles of whiskey at the Golden Spur Saloon and personal belongings in their rented rooms, testament to the fear that the ghost of Sonora's reputation still commanded. Thompson, after being treated for shock by the town doctor, requested a private audience with Father O'Malley. The meeting took place in the small confessional of the church, where the fallen bandit leader spoke in hushed, broken tones about his life's path. The priest listened patiently, as Thompson revealed how he had lost his eye not in some glorious gunfight as his legend claimed, but as a boy watching his family's farm burn during the war, and how that loss had twisted him into something he never meant to become. "I've spent so many years building this persona," Thompson confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. The fearsome black-eyed Thompson, terror of the territories. But today, facing you, I saw myself as I truly am, just a scared boy who never stopped running from his past. Father O'Malley's response carried the weight of personal experience. "The path to redemption is never easy, my son, but it is always open to those who truly seek it. I was barely older than you when I became the ghost, and my reputation was built on far more blood than yours." The priest's voice softened as he shared his own story. "Each life I took made the next one easier, until I could no longer recognize the man I saw in the mirror. It was only through God's grace that I found my way back to the light." As news of the confrontation spread throughout the territory, Devil's Fork saw an unexpected transformation. The town that had lived in fear of the Raven Gang suddenly found itself a place of pilgrimage. Curious visitors began arriving daily, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary gunslinger turned priest. Some came seeking sensational stories of his past exploits, but others, including reformed outlaws and desperate men, came seeking the same redemption that had transformed the ghost of Sonora into Father O'Malley. The priest handled this attention with characteristic humility, turning away those who sought tales of violence while welcoming those who genuinely sought guidance. The church's congregation grew, not just with locals who had witnessed his skill, but with travelers who had heard the story and found hope in its message of redemption. Sarah Cooper, who had shown kindness to Thompson in his moment of defeat, became a regular visitor to the church, often engaging in long conversations with Father O'Malley about faith, redemption, and the nature of change. Through these discussions, she learned more about the man behind both the collar and the legend. "The hardest shot I ever fired," he told her one evening as they sat in the church garden, "was the one I didn't take. It was the day I walked away from being the ghost, leaving my guns buried in the desert. That decision felt like dying, but it was actually the moment I truly began to live." The story of that day's event spread far beyond Devil's Fork, growing with each retelling. Some claimed the ghost had moved faster than the eye could follow, while others insisted he had shot the guns from both men's hands with a single bullet that somehow split in two. But those who had been there knew the truth was more remarkable. They had witnessed not just an incredible display of skill, but a more powerful demonstration of mercy and restraint. Thompson himself underwent a profound change. Rather than leaving town in disgrace, he chose to stay, accepting a position as a stable hand at the local livery. Many wondered at first if it was some ploy to rebuild his reputation, but as weeks passed, they saw a genuine transformation. The man who had terrorized the territory began attending services regularly, his eye patch a reminder of the past he was trying to leave behind. Rattler Wilson and a few other former gang members eventually returned to Devil's Fork, not as outlaws, but as men seeking the same redemption their former leader had found. Father O'Malley welcomed them all, teaching them that the hardest battles are fought not with guns but with the demons within ourselves. 1 year after the confrontation, Devil's Fork had become known not as the town that harbored the Raven Gang, but as a place of second chances. The church, once a humble building struggling to survive, now stood as a beacon of hope for those seeking to change their lives. Father O'Malley continued his work, both as a priest and as a living testament that even the darkest past could be overcome. The ghost of Sonora was no longer just a terrifying legend of the frontier. The story had evolved into something more meaningful, a tale of transformation, of how the deadliest gunslinger in the territory had found greater strength and mercy than he ever had in violence. In the end, the most powerful shot fired that day wasn't the one that disarmed Thompson, but the example that showed other lost souls the way home. 15 years after the legendary confrontation in Devil's Fork, Father O'Malley's legacy had grown far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The small church had expanded into a sanctuary that included an orphanage, a school, and a home for reformed outlaws seeking a new path. The town itself had transformed from a dusty waypoint into a symbol of redemption throughout the territories. Thompson, now the respected owner of the livery stable, had married Sarah Cooper 5 years after his transformation. Together they helped Father O'Malley in his mission, with Sarah continuing to teach at the school while Thompson used his experience to counsel other former outlaws looking to change their ways. His eye patch, once a symbol of terror, became a reminder that even the deepest wounds could heal with time and faith. On a crisp autumn morning in 1890, a young journalist from the Chicago Tribune arrived in Devil's Fork, seeking to document the remarkable story of the ghost of Sonora. Father O'Malley, his hair now more silver than gray, initially declined the interview. However, after much consideration and encouragement from Thompson and Sarah, he agreed to share his story one final time, believing it might help others find their way to redemption. "The ghost died in the desert," O'Malley told the journalist as they sat in the church garden. "What remained was a man who had to learn to live with the weight of his actions. Every life I took, justified or not, left a mark on my soul. It wasn't until I understood that violence begets only more violence that I found my true calling." The priest then revealed a detail he had never shared before, the event that truly led to his transformation. "Before I became the ghost, I was simply Michael O'Malley, a young man who had lost his family to bandits during the journey west. I spent years hunting down those responsible, becoming something far worse than those I sought to punish. But it was an encounter with a dying priest in the Sonoran desert that changed everything." He described how the priest, mortally wounded by the same bandits O'Malley had been tracking, used his last breaths not to curse his killers, but to pray for their souls. "In that moment, I saw the futility of my vengeance. This man, with every reason to hate, chose love instead. It took me years to fully understand the power of that choice." The story of Devil's Fork and its gunslinger-turned-priest became a symbol of hope across the changing frontier. As the Old West gave way to civilization, many found inspiration in how Father O'Malley had bridged the gap between the wild past and the more civilized future. The very skills that had once made him a feared killer became tools for protecting the vulnerable and guiding the lost. Thompson's own transformation became an integral part of the larger narrative. His partnership with Sarah had produced 3 children, all of whom grew up knowing their father not as the infamous Black Eye Thompson, but as a man who had found the courage to change. Their oldest son, Michael, named after Father O'Malley, would later become the town's first proper sheriff, governing with the same mixture of strength and mercy he had learned from his namesake. As the 19th century drew to a close, Father O'Malley's health began to fail, though his spirit remained as strong as ever. On his last day, surrounded by Thompson, Sarah, and countless others whose lives he had touched, he shared a final piece of wisdom. "The greatest victory isn't found in defeating our enemies, but in helping them become our brothers." The ghost of Sonora's cult peacemaker, which had only been drawn once in 15 years during that fateful confrontation with Thompson, was retired to a simple wooden box beneath the church altar. It served as a reminder that even instruments of death could be transformed into symbols of redemption. Devil's Fork continued to grow and prosper, becoming known not for its violent past, but for its message of hope and transformation. The story of Father O'Malley and Thompson became a cornerstone of frontier mythology, not for its gunplay or violence, but for demonstrating that even in the wildest of times and places, the human spirit's capacity for change could overcome the darkest of pasts. Today, visitors to the restored church in Devil's Fork can still see the worn wooden box beneath the altar, containing the weapon that once belonged to the deadliest gunslinger in the territories. But more importantly, they can witness the living legacy of the ghost of Sonora, a community built on the belief that it's never too late to choose a different path, that redemption is possible for anyone willing to seek it, and that the greatest strength lies not in the ability to take life, but in the courage to transform it. The legend of Father O'Malley, the ghost of Sonora, endures not as a tale of gunfights and violence, but as a testament to the power of faith, mercy, and the enduring human capacity for change. In the end, the most fearsome gunslinger of the Old West found his true calling, not in the speed of his draw, but in the depth of his compassion, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire generations to come. The legend of Father O'Malley and the transformation of Devil's Fork rippled through time, influencing far more lives than anyone could have imagined. By 1920, the small frontier town had grown into a thriving city, yet it never lost touch with its remarkable history. The church, where the ghost of Sonora had found his redemption, became a state historical landmark, drawing visitors from across the nation who sought to understand how one man's choice to lay down his guns had sparked a movement of transformation. Thompson and Sarah's children grew up to become pillars of the community, each carrying forward their father's story of redemption in their own way. Their youngest daughter, Grace, became a writer who documented the oral histories of the Old West, ensuring that the true story of the ghost of Sonora would be preserved for future generations. Her collection of testimonies, including accounts from aging witnesses of the legendary confrontation, provided an intimate glimpse into the day that changed not just Devil's Fork, but the very notion of redemption in the American West. Among Grace's most precious recordings was her father's final interview, conducted just months before his death in 1925. In it, Thompson reflected on the moment that had transformed his life. When I looked into Father O'Malley's eyes that day, I saw not just the ghost of Sonora, but a mirror of what I could become, either a man consumed by violence or one who chose a better path. His mercy didn't just spare my life, it saved my soul. The church's orphanage, which Father O'Malley had established, continued its mission long after his passing. Children who found shelter there grew up learning not just the legend of the ghost, but the more important lesson that one's past need not determine one's future. Many of these orphans went on to become teachers, preachers, and community leaders, spreading the message of redemption across the American West. Rattler Wilson, who had also remained in Devil's Fork after his transformation, became known for his work with troubled youth, using his own experience as a testament to the possibility of change. Before his death in 1918, he had helped dozens of young men avoid the path he had once traveled, often sharing the story of how the fastest gun in the territories had chosen to become its most compassionate priest. The worn leather holster and Colt peacemaker that had belonged to the ghost became more than mere relics. Once a year, on the anniversary of the confrontation, they were displayed in a special ceremony that drew people from all walks of life. But unlike many frontier artifacts that glorified violence, these items served as symbols of its renunciation, reminders that true strength lies not in the power to take life, but in the courage to preserve it. As the American West modernized and the era of gunfighters faded into history, the story of Father O'Malley took on new meaning. In an age of increasing violence and uncertainty, his example offered a timeless message about the possibility of transformation. The church he had served became a center for peace and reconciliation, where people from all backgrounds could find the same acceptance and guidance that had once helped a notorious outlaw become a pillar of his community. Sarah Thompson lived to see her grandchildren grow up in a Devil's Fork, far different from the town she had known as a young schoolteacher. Before her passing in 1930, she completed her own memoir, which included a touching tribute to the man who had changed their lives. Father O'Malley taught us that redemption isn't a single moment of change, but a lifetime of choosing mercy over vengeance, love over hate, and hope over fear. His greatest miracle wasn't disarming a gunfighter with supernatural speed. It was showing us all that the path to redemption is always open to those brave enough to walk it. The story found new life during the Great Depression, when many Americans sought hope in tales of transformation and second chances. Devil's Fork, though suffering like the rest of the nation, maintained its reputation as a place of new beginnings, largely due to the foundation laid by Father O'Malley and those he had inspired. The church's soup kitchen, serving meals to displaced families, operated on the same principle that had guided the Ghost of Sonora's transformation, that every soul deserved a chance at redemption. Today, the legend of the Ghost of Sonora has transcended its frontier origins to become a universal story of hope and transformation. The church still stands in modern-day Devil's Fork, its white walls now weathered by over a century of sun and wind, but its message unchanged. Visitors can still see the box containing the ghost's famous peacemaker, not as a celebration of violence, but as a testament to the power of choosing a different path. The tale of how the deadliest gunslinger in the territories became its most beloved priest continues to resonate with each new generation. It reminds us that redemption is possible for anyone, that mercy is stronger than vengeance, and that the greatest battles are won not with weapons, but with the human heart's capacity for change. In the end, the Ghost of Sonora's most enduring legacy wasn't the lives he took as a gunfighter, but the countless souls he helped save as Father O'Malley, the priest who proved that even the darkest past could be overcome by faith, mercy, and the courage to choose a better way. In the early years of World War II, the story of Father O'Malley found new resonance as America grappled with questions of violence, justice, and redemption on a global scale. Veterans returning from the Pacific and European theaters would often make pilgrimages to Devil's Fork, seeking solace in the tale of a man who had found peace after years of violence. The church, now under the stewardship of Michael Thompson Jr., grandson of Black Eye Thompson, became a sanctuary for those struggling to reconcile their wartime experiences with civilian life. In 1945, a particularly poignant chapter was added to the legacy when a young soldier named James Curtis, haunted by his actions during the war, arrived at the church seeking guidance. Curtis had heard the story of the Ghost of Sonora from a chaplain in the Pacific, and something about the tale of a deadly gunman finding redemption spoke to his troubled soul. He would later write in his memoir, "Standing in that church, touching the box that held the ghost's gun, I finally understood that the weight of past actions doesn't have to define our future." The post-war years saw Devil's Fork grow into a symbol of healing and reconciliation. The Thompson family, now in its third generation of service to the community, established a veterans support center adjacent to the historic church. The program, inspired by Father O'Malley's teachings, helped countless former soldiers find their way back to civilian life through the same principles of redemption and transformation that had changed the lives of Thompson and his former gang members decades earlier. Sarah Thompson's granddaughter, Elizabeth, became a renowned psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery. Her groundbreaking work, The Ghost's Legacy, Healing Through Redemption, drew parallels between Father O'Malley's transformation and modern psychological theories about post-traumatic growth. She argued that the priest's journey from feared gunslinger to beloved spiritual leader provided a powerful framework for understanding how individuals could not only survive trauma, but use it as a catalyst for positive change. The church archives, meticulously maintained over the decades, revealed new aspects of Father O'Malley's wisdom through preserved letters and sermon notes. One particularly moving correspondence, discovered in 1960, was a letter he had written to a troubled young man contemplating a life of crime. "The measure of a man is not in how many enemies he can defeat, but in how many souls he can lift up." I have lived both lives, that of a taker and that of a giver, and I tell you with absolute certainty that true power lies not in the ability to end life, but in the courage to nurture it. As America entered the turbulent 1960s, the story of the Ghost of Sonora took on new significance in discussions about violence, justice, and social change. Civil rights activists found inspiration in the tale of transformation, citing how Devil's Fork had evolved from a place of fear and violence to one of healing and hope. The church became a stopping point for freedom riders, who drew strength from the story of how one community had overcome its violent past through understanding and compassion. The Raven Gang's former hideout, long abandoned in the hills outside town, was converted into a retreat center in 1965. Named Ghost's Rest, it became a place where people from all walks of life could come to reflect, heal, and seek their own path to redemption. The irony of transforming an outlaw's refuge into a sanctuary for spiritual renewal was not lost on those who knew the full story of Father O'Malley's journey. In 1970, a Hollywood producer approached the Thompson family about making a film based on the Ghost of Sonora's story. While the family declined, believing that Hollywood might sensationalize the violence rather than emphasize the message of redemption, they did agree to collaborate on a documentary that captured the true spirit of Father O'Malley's legacy. The resulting film, The Ghost Who Found God, won critical acclaim for its honest portrayal of transformation and redemption. As Devil's Fork entered the modern era, the principles that Father O'Malley had lived by continued to shape the community. The town became known for its innovative rehabilitation programs, drawing on the lesson that every person, no matter their past, deserved a chance at redemption. The annual celebration of the confrontation between Thompson and the Ghost evolved into a week-long festival of reconciliation, where people from around the world gathered to share their own stories of transformation. The church's collection of artifacts grew to include not just the Ghost's famous peacemaker, but also items that represented the ripple effect of his transformation. Thompson's silver-plated revolvers, surrendered the day after the confrontation, the school bell Sarah had rung to celebrate their wedding, and countless letters from people whose lives had been touched by the story of a gunslinger who found peace. By the end of the 20th century, Devil's Fork had become more than just a town with an extraordinary history. It was a living testament to the power of redemption. The story of Father O'Malley, the Ghost of Sonora, continued to offer hope to those seeking to change their lives, proving that even in the darkest of times, the path to redemption remains open to all who are brave enough to walk it. As the new millennium dawned, the legacy of Father O'Malley and the transformation of Devil's Fork reached beyond American borders. The advent of the internet allowed the story of the Ghost of Sonora to spread globally, resonating with people from diverse cultures who found hope in the tale of redemption. International pilgrims began arriving in Devil's Fork, each seeking to understand how a single act of mercy had sparked a century-spanning movement of transformation. In 2005, during the renovation of the church's old rectory, workers discovered a hidden compartment containing Father O'Malley's personal journal. The leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age, provided intimate insights into the spiritual struggles of the man who had once been the most feared gunslinger in the territories. The journal entries, spanning from his days as the Ghost through his transformation and later years as a priest, revealed the depth of his internal battle. One particularly moving entry, dated just weeks after the confrontation with Thompson, read, "Today I held my gun again, feeling its familiar weight. But now it serves as a reminder not of lives taken, but of lives spared. In showing mercy to Thompson, I finally understood that the hardest battle isn't against our enemies, but against the darkness within ourselves. Every day I pray for the strength to choose mercy, knowing that each act of compassion helps heal not only others, but my own wounded soul." The Thompson family, now in its 5th generation of service to Devil's Fork, established the O'Malley Institute for Reconciliation in 2010. Housed in a modern building adjacent to the historic church, the institute became a leading center for conflict resolution and rehabilitation. Scholars and practitioners from around the world came to study how the principles that had transformed a violent frontier town could be applied to modern-day conflicts. Dr. Maria Thompson Chen, great-great-granddaughter of Black-Eye Thompson and Sarah Cooper, emerged as a leading voice in restorative justice. Her groundbreaking research demonstrated how the model of redemption established by Father O'Malley could be adapted to address contemporary social issues. "The power of the Devil's Fork story," she wrote, "lies not in its dramatic confrontation, but in what happened afterward. The slow, steady work of building a community where redemption isn't just possible, but expected." The discovery of Father O'Malley's journal also shed new light on the fate of other Raven Gang members. Several entries described his ongoing correspondence with former outlaws who had sought new lives in different territories. These letters, some of which were preserved in the church archives, revealed how the ripple effect of that single confrontation had touched lives far beyond Devil's Fork's borders. In 2015, a group of international filmmakers produced a documentary series titled Echoes of the Ghost, A Legacy of Redemption. The series traced the influence of Father O'Malley's story across generations and cultures, featuring interviews with people whose lives had been changed by the tale of the Ghost of Sonora. From former gang members in Los Angeles to peacekeepers in war-torn regions, each shared how the story had helped them believe in the possibility of transformation. The church's annual Reconciliation Festival evolved into a global gathering, drawing participants from every continent. The week-long event combined traditional elements, like the display of the Ghost's Peacemaker, with modern workshops on conflict resolution, trauma healing, and community building. The festival became a living demonstration of how ancient wisdom about redemption could address contemporary challenges. Perhaps the most powerful testament to Father O'Malley's legacy came in 2020, when Devil's Fork was rocked by its first violent crime in decades. The community's response, guided by generations of teaching about redemption, focused not on punishment, but on restoration. The young offender, guided by the same principles that had transformed Thompson, became an advocate for youth intervention programs. The Ghost's Rest Retreat Center expanded its programs to include virtual sessions, allowing people worldwide to engage with the principles of transformation that had changed Devil's Fork. The center's motto, taken from one of Father O'Malley's last sermons, became a touchstone for those seeking change. Redemption isn't found in denying our past, but in choosing our future. As Devil's Fork approached the 150th anniversary of the legendary confrontation, the town stood as a living monument to the power of second chances. The church, still standing on its hill, had witnessed countless transformations, from notorious outlaws to troubled veterans, from lost souls to community leaders. The Ghost's Peacemaker, preserved in its wooden box beneath the altar, continued to draw visitors who sought to understand how an instrument of death had become a symbol of rebirth. The story of Father O'Malley, the Ghost of Sonora, transcended its historical context to become a timeless parable about the human capacity for change. In a world often divided by violence and hatred, Devil's Fork stood as proof that another way was possible, that mercy could overcome vengeance, that love could conquer fear, and that even the darkest past could be transformed into a beacon of hope for others. The legend of the Ghost of Sonora had evolved from a tale of the Old West into a universal story of redemption, inspiring each new generation to believe in the possibility of transformation. Father O'Malley's legacy lived on not just in the institutions and programs that bore his name, but in the countless lives changed by the simple truth he had discovered: that the path to redemption is always open to those with the courage to take the first step. As Devil's Fork prepared to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the legendary confrontation, a remarkable discovery breathed new life into the story of Father O'Malley. A collection of previously unknown letters found during the restoration of an old ranch house outside town revealed a series of correspondence between the Ghost of Sonora and the priest who had first inspired his transformation in the desert. These letters, written before O'Malley took his vows, provided an intimate glimpse into the soul-searching journey that had led the deadliest gunslinger in the territories to lay down his weapons. The letters painted a portrait of a man wrestling with his past, seeking understanding of how violence had consumed his life. In one particularly poignant passage, O'Malley wrote, "Each night, I see their faces, not just those I've killed, but those whose lives I've shattered. The weight of it all threatens to crush me. Yet in your words about mercy, I see a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there is a way to use what I've learned about human nature not to end lives, but to save them. The discovery sparked a renewed interest in the psychological aspects of redemption. The O'Malley Institute launched a major research initiative, studying how profound personal transformation occurs and what conditions make it possible. Dr. Thompson led a team of international researchers in examining how the principles that had transformed Devil's Fork could be applied to conflict zones and communities struggling with cycles of violence. In 2025, the Institute's findings were published in a groundbreaking report titled The Anatomy of Redemption: Lessons from the Ghost of Sonora. The study demonstrated how Father O'Malley's journey from violence to peace had created a replicable model for community transformation. The report highlighted key elements: the power of mercy shown at crucial moments, the importance of community support, and the need for visible examples of successful change. The Ghost's Rest Retreat Center established satellite locations in 5 countries, each adapting Father O'Malley's principles to local cultural contexts. From former child soldiers in Africa to gang members in Central America, the centers provided safe spaces for those seeking to rewrite their life stories. The program's success rate in preventing returns to violence caught the attention of international peacekeeping organizations. During the 150th anniversary celebrations, Devil's Fork welcomed visitors from around the globe. The town had grown while maintaining its character as a sanctuary for those seeking change. The original church, now a National Historic Landmark, stood alongside modern facilities dedicated to peace building and reconciliation. Yet the heart of the community remained rooted in the simple truth Father O'Malley had lived, that redemption was possible for anyone willing to choose a different path. A special exhibition at the Devil's Fork Historical Society showcased artifacts from the town's transformation. Alongside the Ghost's famous peacemaker lay items that told the larger story: Thompson's silver-plated revolvers, Sarah Cooper's schoolhouse bell, and now the newly discovered letters. Each piece contributed to a narrative that spanned generations, showing how one act of mercy had sparked a movement that continued to grow. The Thompson family's youngest generation took an active role in preserving and sharing their heritage. Emily Thompson Martinez, a filmmaker, began documenting oral histories from families whose lives had been touched by Father O'Malley's legacy. Her work revealed how the ripple effects of that fateful confrontation had shaped not just individual lives, but entire family trajectories across multiple generations. The anniversary also saw the launch of the Global Redemption Initiative, a program designed to apply Devil's Fork's lessons to contemporary challenges. The initiative brought together experts in conflict resolution, trauma healing, and community building, all working to adapt Father O'Malley's principles to modern contexts. The program's motto, drawn from his newly discovered letters, captured its essence. True strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the courage to transform. As part of the commemoration, the church hosted a unique ceremony where descendants of both the Raven Gang members and those they had once terrorized came together in reconciliation. The event, broadcast globally, demonstrated how the cycle of violence could be broken through understanding and forgiveness. Participants shared stories of how their families had been changed by the example set in Devil's Fork so many years ago. The O'Malley Institute's research continued to yield insights into the nature of personal and community transformation. Studies showed that communities that adopted principles similar to those established in Devil's Fork experienced significant reductions in violence and recidivism. The Devil's Fork model became recognized in academic circles as a proven approach to community rehabilitation. As the sun set on the anniversary celebrations, Devil's Fork stood as a living testament to the enduring power of redemption. The town had become more than just a symbol. It was a working model of how communities could overcome violent pasts and build peaceful futures. The legacy of Father O'Malley, the Ghost of Sonora, continued to offer hope to those seeking change, proving that no past was too dark to be transformed by mercy, faith, and the courage to choose a different path. The story of the Ghost of Sonora had transcended its origins to become a universal tale of hope and transformation. In a world still struggling with violence and division, Devil's Fork stood as proof that another way was possible, that even the deadliest gunslinger could become an instrument of peace, and that any community, no matter its past, could become a beacon of hope for future generations. As Devil's Fork moved beyond its 150th anniversary celebrations, the impact of Father O'Malley's legacy continued to evolve in unexpected ways. In 2026, the discovery of a time capsule buried beneath the church's original cornerstone revealed yet another layer to the story that had shaped generations. Among the preserved items was a detailed account of the priest's final days, written by Thompson himself, sharing intimate details of conversations that had never before been made public. The document revealed that Father O'Malley, in his last hours, had spoken of a vision for Devil's Fork that extended far beyond his lifetime. "This town," he had told Thompson, "must become more than just a place of second chances. It must be a living proof that the cycle of violence can be broken, that mercy is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. The true test of our work will come not in years but in generations." This newfound insight sparked a global symposium on intergenerational healing, hosted by the O'Malley Institute. Scholars, peace workers, and community leaders from conflict zones worldwide gathered to examine how the principles that had transformed Devil's Fork could be applied to historical cycles of violence and revenge. The symposium produced a comprehensive framework for community restoration, dubbed The Ghost's Way, a path to collective healing. The Thompson Chen Foundation, established by Dr. Maria Thompson Chen, launched an ambitious project to create a network of redemption centers in troubled communities across 6 continents. Each center incorporated elements of Devil's Fork's history while adapting to local cultural contexts. From former war zones in the Balkans to gang-controlled neighborhoods in South America, the centers became beacons of hope for communities seeking to break free from cycles of violence. In a particularly moving development, the original church in Devil's Fork became the site of an annual Redemption Summit, where former antagonists from conflicts around the world could meet in neutral territory to begin the process of reconciliation. The summit's location was chosen specifically because of the powerful symbolism of the ghost's peacemaker resting beneath the altar, a weapon transformed into a symbol of peace. The Thompson family archives continued to yield new insights into the town's transformation. A series of daguerreotypes discovered in 2027 provided the first known images of Father O'Malley in his later years, showing him working in the church garden, teaching children, and counseling those who sought his guidance. These images, paired with his writings and the testimonies of those he had helped, painted a complete picture of a man who had truly lived his belief in redemption. Emily Thompson Martinez's documentary series, The Ghost's Children, traced the lives of families who had been touched by Father O'Malley's influence. The series revealed how the principle of redemption had been passed down through generations, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond Devil's Fork. One episode featured the great-grandson of a Raven gang member working alongside the descendant of one of their victims in a peace-building project in the Middle East. The Ghost's Rest Retreat Center expanded its programs to include virtual reality experiences that allowed participants to walk in the footsteps of both the Ghost and Father O'Malley, experiencing the transformational journey from violence to peace. This innovative approach to teaching empathy and understanding drew praise from educators and counselors worldwide. As technology advanced, the O'Malley Institute developed an artificial intelligence program that analyzed patterns of community transformation using Devil's Fork's history as a baseline. The program helped identify key factors that contributed to successful rehabilitation of troubled communities, while also highlighting the crucial role of human connection and personal example in the process of change. In 2028, Devil's Fork was designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, not for its buildings or artifacts, but for its living heritage of transformation and reconciliation. The designation acknowledged the town's unique contribution to human cultural development, a working model of how communities could overcome violent pasts and build peaceful futures. The church's original bell, which had rung out on the day of the legendary confrontation, was restored and began tolling again each sunset, reminding the community of its journey from fear to hope. The sound carried across a town that had grown but never lost its identity as a place of new beginnings. Perhaps the most profound testament to Father O'Malley's legacy came in the form of a letter found among Thompson's personal effects, written but never sent, just before his own passing. In it, he reflected on the true miracle of Devil's Fork. The ghost of Sonora could kill a man faster than anyone in the territories, but Father O'Malley's greatest power was in bringing people back to life, not physically but spiritually. He taught us that real strength lies not in being feared, but in being the reason others find hope. As Devil's Fork moved forward into an uncertain future, it remained anchored in the principles that had transformed it from a violent frontier town into a global symbol of redemption. The story of the ghost of Sonora continued to offer hope to those seeking to change their lives, proving that redemption was not just a personal journey but a collective possibility that could transform entire communities. The legacy of Father O'Malley, preserved in words, artifacts, and living example, stood as a testament to the enduring power of mercy and the human capacity for change. In a world still grappling with violence and division, Devil's Fork remained a beacon of hope, showing that even the darkest past could be transformed into a light that guided others toward a better future. As Devil's Fork entered its third century, the influence of Father O'Malley's legacy found new resonance in a rapidly changing world. The year 2030 brought an unexpected discovery that would add yet another layer to the town's remarkable story. During a digital archiving project at the Vatican, researchers uncovered a series of correspondence between Father O'Malley and Vatican officials, revealing that the former gunslinger's influence had reached far beyond the American frontier, touching the highest levels of the Catholic Church. The letters showed that Father O'Malley's unique approach to redemption had sparked intense theological discussions in Rome. His practical experience in transforming lives, combined with his profound spiritual insights, had helped shape the Church's evolving stance on rehabilitation and reconciliation. One letter from a cardinal in 1889 noted, "The transformation of the ghost of Sonora offers us a living parable of divine mercy, proving that the greatest sinners can become the most powerful instruments of grace." This revelation led to the establishment of the International Center for Transformative Justice at Devil's Fork, a collaboration between the O'Malley Institute and leading universities worldwide. The center's mission was to bridge the gap between spiritual redemption and practical rehabilitation, developing programs that addressed both the soul's need for healing and society's need for restoration. Dr. James Thompson Wong, a descendant of both Black-Eye Thompson and Sarah Cooper, emerged as a leading voice in the field of trauma-informed community healing. His groundbreaking work, The Ghost's Echo, Generational Healing in Post-Conflict Communities, demonstrated how the principles that had transformed Devil's Fork could be adapted to address historical trauma and cyclical violence. The town itself continued to evolve while maintaining its essential character as a sanctuary for transformation. The original church, now surrounded by modern facilities dedicated to peace-building and reconciliation, remained the spiritual heart of the community. Visitors from around the world still came to see the ghost's peacemaker, not as a relic of violence, but as a symbol of the possibility of change. In 2031, the Thompson Chen Foundation launched an ambitious initiative called the Ghost's Legacy Project, which used advanced technology to create immersive educational experiences. Through augmented reality, visitors could walk the streets of 1875 Devil's Fork, witnessing the legendary confrontation and its aftermath from multiple perspectives. The project helped new generations understand the profound impact of choosing mercy over vengeance. The Ghost's Rest Retreat Center developed specialized programs for modern-day warriors, soldiers, law enforcement officers, and others who carried the burden of justified violence. These programs drew on Father O'Malley's own journey from skilled warrior to man of peace, helping participants find ways to integrate their experiences into a meaningful life of service. A particularly moving chapter was added to the Devil's Fork story when a group of international peacekeepers, inspired by Father O'Malley's example, established a network of ghost stations in conflict zones around the world. These safe havens, modeled after the original church in Devil's Fork, provided neutral ground where opposing factions could begin the difficult work of reconciliation. The discovery of Sarah Cooper's complete journals in 2032 provided intimate insights into the daily reality of Devil's Fork's transformation. Her detailed observations of how the community had changed, from a place of fear to one of hope, offered practical lessons for modern communities struggling with violence and division. The miracle, she wrote, wasn't just in Father O'Malley's dramatic confrontation with Thompson, but in the 1,000 small acts of mercy that followed, each one helping to heal the wounds of the past. The O'Malley Institute's research continued to yield surprising insights into the nature of personal and community transformation. Studies showed that communities that adopted the Devil's Fork model of redemption-centered justice experienced not only reduced violence, but improved economic outcomes and stronger social bonds. The model's success challenged traditional approaches to crime and punishment, suggesting that mercy could be more effective than retribution in creating lasting change. As global tensions rose in the early 2030s, Devil's Fork's example became more relevant than ever. The town hosted a series of high-level diplomatic meetings where its history of transformation provided both inspiration and practical guidance for international peace efforts. World leaders walked the same streets where the ghost of Sonora had laid down his guns, finding hope in the story of how one community had chosen a different path. Emily Thompson Martinez's ongoing documentary project, Echoes of the Ghost, continued to uncover new stories of lives transformed by Father O'Malley's legacy. The series revealed how the principles of redemption and reconciliation had been passed down through generations, creating resilient communities capable of breaking cycles of violence and revenge. The church's annual Reconciliation Festival evolved into a global celebration of transformation, drawing participants from every corner of the world. The week-long event combined traditional elements with cutting-edge approaches to conflict resolution and community healing, demonstrating how ancient wisdom could address modern challenges. As Devil's Fork approached its bicentennial, the town stood as a living testament to the enduring power of redemption. The story of the ghost of Sonora had transcended its historical context to become a universal symbol of hope, proving that no past was too violent to be transformed by mercy, no wound too deep to be healed by forgiveness, and no community too broken to be restored by love. The legacy of Father O'Malley continued to offer hope to those seeking to change their lives, while providing practical guidance for communities working to break free from cycles of violence. In a world still grappling with conflict and division, Devil's Fork remained a beacon of possibility, showing that the path to redemption remained open to all who had the courage to walk it. In the end, the legacy of Father O'Malley, once known as the Ghost of Sonora, transcended time and borders, becoming more than just a tale of the American frontier. His transformation from the deadliest gunslinger to a beloved priest proved that redemption was possible for anyone willing to choose a different path. The small town of Devil's Fork, once a haven for outlaws, became an international symbol of hope and transformation. The old church, where a legendary confrontation between a bandit and a priest changed countless lives, still stands today. Beneath its altar, the ghost's peacemaker rests in its wooden box, no longer a weapon of death, but a testament to the power of mercy. Black Eye Thompson's descendants, alongside countless others touched by Father O'Malley's wisdom, continued his mission of peace and reconciliation. The O'Malley Institute, Ghosts Rest Retreat Centers, and Thompson Chen Foundation spread his message of redemption across the globe, helping troubled communities find their path to healing. Perhaps the most powerful lesson from the Ghost of Sonora's story wasn't in the speed of his draw or the accuracy of his aim, but in his choice to holster his gun and extend a hand of mercy. His journey from feared gunslinger to beloved priest demonstrated that true strength lies not in the power to take life, but in the courage to transform it. Today, as visitors walk the streets of Devil's Fork and hear the evening church bells toll, they're reminded of a simple truth that Father O'Malley lived by. No past is too dark to be redeemed, no soul too lost to be saved, and no community too broken to be healed. The Ghost of Sonora's legacy lives on, not as a tale of violence, but as an enduring testament to the power of redemption and the triumph of mercy over vengeance. Up next, You've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.